This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Sahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 346 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Giovanni Reina's contract extension, Golden Boy Erling Haaland putting 4 past Hertha, Youssoufa Moukoko writing Bundesliga history, the glorious FC Schalke conquering last place, and briefly we will preview the Champions League game against Club Brugge. For all that and more joins me Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing?
Hey, Stefan, I'm doing well. The sun is shining and the power's back, so nothing to complain about. How are you doing?
Yeah, I was biting my nails a little bit when you reported that you had a power outage because we wanted to record an international break Q&A, but for all the 2 weeks of free time, we just couldn't schedule it for various reasons with various panelists. So I really apologize that we couldn't turn out a show before. It just for some reason it did not work. I mean, it's kind of true to form these days as the transition from 45 to 46 is taking a little bit longer, it appears. But yeah, it's good to finally talk about things. And oh boy, Matthias, there are so many things to talk about. But before we do that, we also have to announce a sponsor for this episode.
Wir sind komplett schuldenfrei. Wir zahlen keinen einzigen Euro an Zinsen.
And this episode is sponsored by Ben Hunt, who would love a discussion in earnest about the build-up associated with the backline. And he talks about Hummels, Dimes, Akanji, Guerrero link-up, and John the ball carrier. And he thinks that those three do deserve huge amounts of credit. Matthias, before we actually talk about this, I think without any further ado, we can both say, yes, they do deserve a lot of credit, especially in the game against Hertha.
I completely agree. I mean, you saw all of those dynamics. I mean, granted, there weren't too many Mats Hummels dimes, but overall, you saw the dynamic of the strengths of all three of those players who have very different strengths. And absolute high credit to all of them. I think they have exceeded our expectations. I know Akanji was a little bit maligned last season, or very maligned. He's come back strong. Can slotting into central defense, doing, or one of the back three, has done very well. And Hummels has found his old Hummels form. So absolutely agree with him. Yeah.
Now, what Matthias obviously does not know is that I prepared a little thing to dive into this Hertha game and to take us back into memory lane of this glorious 5-2 victory. And here it goes.
Royce. Now Chen into the area and Haaland! And there's the equaliser! And he's out of position now as Julian Brandt sets off at pace. Haaland. The flag has stayed down. It's Erling Haaland! Haaland. Oh, look at the pace of Erling Haaland to complete his hat-trick! Oh, he makes it look so simple. He's a force of nature, a born goal scorer, a hat-trick in less than 20 minutes. Marco Reus. It's Meunier in for Haaland. It's Guerrero! And it's 4 for Dortmund. However, Borussia Dortmund will want to answer in the way they know how, with Erling Haaland! The perfect reply! It's 4 for Haaland, 5 for Borussia Dortmund. Well, a well-earned breather for Erling Haaland. A devastating display. He's replaced by a man who's not only setting a Bundesliga record, he's smashing it. Youssoufa Moukoko, the youngest player in Bundesliga history, just 16 years and a day old.
That's obviously the exuberant voice of Phil Bonney. Matthias, if I remember correctly, he featured on the Yellowwallpod once, didn't he? Or was that Rob Turner?
I was going to say, that was Rob Turner.
Damn it.
I was going to say Yellowwallpod OG Rob Turner.
Yes. We need to get him back on the show.
That was way, way, way long, many, many moons ago.
That was even before my time.
Yes. It was Matthew, Rob, and myself. And then Rob went on to bigger and better things, as one can hear. And but we are going strong. So it was great to actually hear him again.
Well, that was Phil Bonney, but Rob Turner is also often on the microphone featuring for ESPN, if I'm not mistaken. He is also doing some commentary stuff for Dortmund, so people have actually known him. But nevertheless, this whole little clip was almost 1 minute 20 long. Not my fault, really. It's more because Dortmund were scoring so many goals against Hertha. And Matthias, that pretty much was the story of the second half, obviously. But before we talk about the exploits of Erling Haaland and how he almost single-handedly destroyed Hertha Berlin, we do have to talk about the first half, which was more of a struggle fest for the old black and yellows, especially the lack of focus come to mind of Rafa Guerreiro first having like a atrocious first touch where the ball just runs out of bounds, and then a couple minutes later him attempting a throw in and just sort of slips through his hands, where you felt like the focus maybe wasn't at 100%, and Hertha, I thought they were up for it. So after Bayern dropped points, after Leipzig dropped points, I wasn't sure whether Dortmund were there to, capitalize, and obviously they would eat the 1-0 in the, 20th minute or so from Mateusz Cunha. So what do you make of the early woes of Borussia Dortmund, which is also not a novelty this season?
I'll be honest, the one that stuck out is, like you said, Guerreiro, who in a short period of time made some very untypical mistakes. I think that all just comes down to, honestly, players are tired. I don't think we need to go into that because we've already gone into it a few times this season, and others are saying it as well. I think in the international break, every single podcast I listened to, somebody was talking about the players are just tired, and you can kind of see that, especially a team like Dortmund, who are playing internationally, plus players going on these ridiculous international break friendly matches. I mean, competitive ones we can fight over, but I think the friendlies just have to go. I mean, that the United States is doing a friendly in Wales, what's the point of that? But it was, Hertha disrupted Dortmund and did that really well. But then when they had the ball, I'll be honest, Hertha didn't really do much with it. They tried. Dortmund played very, very well. All in all, and I watched the highlights again this morning, and really the only things that stuck out, aside from Mateusz Cunha's 2 goals, and we can talk about the penalty later, but that was a wonder strike. No chance for Bürki. Luka Bacchio had a shot before that where Dortmund's defense just kind of went away. It's like Mats Hummels went, I'm going to go over there now. So here you have a free shot at goal, and Luka Bacchio then shooting it out of the stadium, it seemed. But other than that, Hertha really didn't do much. I mean, it's not like they were dangerous in an attacking sense. They were very uncomfortable for Dortmund in a build-up sense, but then when they had it, they were just as sloppy and lacked quality. But they, like you said, they were up for the fight. It took Dortmund a little bit. It took Dortmund's halftime to really kind of wake up, and I don't know what was said at the half to really make that transition, that change. There was pressing and better passing, but Hertha did their disruptive best in the first half. But beyond that, there wasn't really a ton Hertha did.
Well, I'll refute that statement wholeheartedly, Matthias. I think you've never been more wrong, because I think Dortmund actually woke up around the 40th minute. So these
okay, 5 minutes,
5 minutes. I will fight about. No, but yeah, I think you're more or less right here. Just that Dortmund, I think, wrestled back control around the 35th minute or so, and actually almost made it count very close to halftime when Guerreiro squared the ball over to Haaland, who just for some reason actually could not reach for it. And I think he got a touch to the ball. It just sort of went away from goal, then in, which is very untypical. But I guess he also did not expect Guerrero to square it over in that situation. But they made amends for it rather quickly after the break. What I have to say, I really liked Matteo Guendouzi from Berlin in the first half, especially. I thought the way how he won the ball more often than not on Dortmund's right side, and then also marched forward with the ball, really breached through Dortmund's ranks and made things happen for Hertha. As you said, it's not like they created a plethora of chances, but I still thought that it was more of a open game, let's say, and it was obviously a very gritty midfield battle, and both teams sort of struggling to really unfold something in the final third. And I've to say, especially in the first 20 minutes or so, someone who did not look really comfortable. I mean, the entire team of Borussia Dortmund looked wasn't up to the task just yet, but once again Thomas Meunier not really looking all that sharp, squaring a ball across the box straight into the feet of a Hertha player, and that could have easily led to a goal. And according to FBref, he also had the most pass attempts blocked by 6, which is quite a margin to the second highest value, which I think is 3 or 2. So I really think that Meunier needs to do much better. I mean, granted, he is targeted as the weak spot, which kind of makes sense. If you look at previous mistakes, he has been pressured the most of all Dortmund players, and it's not like he was advancing so much that he sort of invited that pressure. It's just more that he takes a long time on the ball, and when he also receives the ball, players are also running toward him just because they know that they can force a mistake out of him. And in the second half, that vastly improved. He dealt very much better with the pressure and had a couple of really nice dribbles. But yeah, I think if you want to not go behind by a great margin, you really need to cut out these mistakes. And especially Thomas Meunier in the opening 15-20 minutes of a game or so needs to improve. I thought that the goal that Hertha scored, obviously, maybe Axel Witsel can do a little bit better in previous challenge or tackle. Mats Hummels may be able to block the shot if he positions himself a bit differently. But I'll just say this. I think, it originated from a pretty just long punt from Alexander Schwolo, the goalkeeper, and it was just well taken. So credit where it's due. Not much where that Burki can do anything from there. I think it was 27 yards out. It's the same distance that Luke Bacchio took this one shot that you described, flying into the Berlin night sky. So that was just a very decent goal, and I think after that Dortmund got into the game a little better. It was sort of a wake up moment for them. So the first half is of all the memorable moments of this game is probably not the one to memorize too deeply. And I'm just glad that Dortmund didn't go down by more goals than just one. So they really could repair it in the second half. And then obviously after the break, it's kind of funny that you see immediately that Emre Can made the vertical run, because that was sort of really lacking in the first half. And even the commentators, Steffen Freund and Phil Bonney, both pointed it out that on the right side there is all this space, but no one's making the run, and that is sort of Hakimi is lacking in the situations. I think this is what they said, and I think they were completely right in that analysis. And then you see Emre Can making the run through, and the play was actually started sort of by Meunier, and then Royce had this really quick first time pass, and then obviously Emre Can with a really great cross across sort of 3 defenders and the goalkeeper, and then Haaland, like a striker, just puts it away. So that goal in itself was already faster played than pretty much almost every play in the first half. And it's kind of weird that Dortmund have made this sort of a theme now, that in the first half they take a lot of touches, they take a lot of time to play the ball and pass it around, and then in the second half, like someone is actually flicking a switch, their passing tempo is increasing, and the ball is played around much quicker. Matthias, do you have any explanation for that? I don't, so I don't expect you to have one, but just come up with one now.
I mean, could it be actually a strategy? Given Dortmund's pace and high intensity and physicality that they can have, combined with the high fixture list that they have, that you kind of have to, balance out your effort a little bit. And maybe the thought is, well, if we go slower in the first half, we have the quality in the second half to tick it up. And if we have to come back from behind, we can, versus if we expend all our energy in the first 60 minutes and then we break down to the last 30, we don't have enough in the tank to come back. In theory, that could actually kind of make sense. Because the weird thing is, if we compare it to a few of the previous seasons, when Matheus Cunha scored that goal, and you look at Dortmund's body language, and I know we always talk, people love to say Dortmund don't have the mentality to win, but they didn't drop their heads. I mean, it was like, okay, let's go. The same can be said for the matches against Bayern this season, Super Cup, and then also in the league, that they didn't just give up. They kept going. They kept trying. And that's something that was kind of missing in previous seasons, where a Matheus Cunha goal could easily then deflate the side. And I think they have enough people and enough characters in their side now that just don't let that happen. I believe it was in the first half where Emre Can was pushing forward and he was kind of motioning with his hand for Thomas Meunier to overlap and make the run into space.
That was so notable that they actually made a replay out of it.
Yeah, he's like, come on, let's go. So it was almost, you have those guys like Emre Can, and Steffen Freund did point him out and said his mentality of fight all the time is something that Dortmund was lacking. And, tactics and all that is incredibly crucial and critical. And Emre Can combines the quality and tactical know-how and knowledge and intelligence with that fighter mentality. And you do need that. No matter what you want to say, that's something that Bayern has in spades for the most part. And Dortmund, you can rightfully say, did not in the past have, at least the last few seasons, not really have that in them. And I feel like that issue is not completely gone, but for the most part, you've got enough players in the squad that make them tick over and make them keep fighting, that want to do it. And Emre Can probably embodies that the most. What I just found so interesting is that was kind of like, hey, Hertha, this move is going to happen with Can doing the underlapping center back run. And it's like they just ignored that. Then the second half starts, and like you said, boom, that's the first thing that happens after, was it 3 minutes? And the equalizer was in, and then Hertha just fell apart. And Haaland did what Haaland does. I mean, all credit to Hertha's Twitter account for after the match, when Haaland said, woke up this morning, basically at the European Golden Boy, and ended the evening scoring 4 goals, and then was, went to bed, or, got up this morning from bed, and they retweeted his tweet and said, do machines actually sleep? So, I mean, all credit to them for acknowledging Erling Haaland, and that Dortmund just, at the end of the day, deservedly blew them away.
Yeah, interesting about Haaland is, I think, first of all, we obviously need to talk about the way he runs into the channels and all that. And obviously, when we talk about the 2-1, I think it's very crucial to mention. You said that Hertha fell apart, but actually after the 1-1, they did not. They actually had this pretty good chance right before Dortmund scored. And I think Pekarik floated a nice cross into the box, and if the cutback wasn't blocked, I don't know if Bürki was on there or someone else, but in the end the ball landed with Bürki, and then he obviously rolls it forward to Jürgen Brandt, and Brandt then has this exceptional timing. And I think I mentioned on before here that I am very much leading the initiative to play more vertical balls toward Erling Haaland, just because I was proven right in just this instance, because you see what he can do. He makes a perfect run. The opponent tries to play offside in the moment that Brandt plays the ball, and as the defender stops to build the offside trap, Haaland has 10 meters of separation already. And then what I find very interesting is you could already see it with his shot in the, I think, 17th minute, when he sort of tumbled over just because he's putting his full weight into the shot. Whoever blocked it needed treatment afterwards because it was just that powerful, and it wasn't even a direct hit to the head. It was just sort of in the shoulder area, and still the player needed some some help afterwards. So that just tells you how much force is in these shots. And obviously when Haaland sort of strings it up for the 2-1, it's obviously not the perfect angle, but the power he has in the shot, and the placement was not 100% perfect, but it's just so hard that Schwolo just couldn't react fast enough. His limbs did not move fast enough. You sometimes see these sports science videos from ESPN, how much a hitter in baseball actually sees off the ball, how many frames per second are sent to the brain before you actually can hit it, and how many times you actually sort of see the ball, in these milliseconds. And I think it's the same for the goalkeeper, that it's just almost impossible to react from that sort of distance to a Haaland shot, because it's just drilled home with such panache. That's just awesome, and it's something a bit reminiscent of the Marco Reus shooting technique, because he does it too, that he shoots so powerfully that he tumbles over and sometimes sadly injures himself. But that Haaland shot, damn. I mean, if you want to deflate your opponent, I think that's the way to do. And afterwards, I'm entirely with you. Hertha were sort of defeated. And the next thing, if I may jump right to the 3-1, Jude Bellingham came on, and he immediately put pressure on a player, and due to him, forcing a pass to the outside, that led sort of to the assist, if you will, to Haaland. I just want to say how good Jude Bellingham is in the way he puts pressure on opponents, how he bullies them around immediately. I mean, in the time he was on the field, I think it was sort of 30 minutes, he had 17 pressures, and he was leading the team already by quite a margin, and that sort of tells you everything you need to know about that kid. So while obviously it was a massive screw up by Hertha to pass it sort of into the path of Haaland, who then expertly puts it away, I just want to highlight that you can, after 60 minutes of play, bring on the 17-year-old Bellingham for the Hood, who also didn't have a bad game. And you get the sort of presence from this guy already that forces mistakes. And once again, I've been very impressed by Bellingham, even if he only gets like a 30-minute run out.
And I think that's the right thing to do with a player like him. He's young. He's 17 years old, for crying out loud. I still remember what I was doing at 17. And, the Landesliga wasn't quite the Bundesliga. Let me put it to you that way. But with Bellingham, what was interesting is also, there's no fear. And he immediately got under the skin of Hertha tough guy, Schwolo, who squared up to him. And I almost laughed watching that. I'm like, no, Schwolo, you're not that guy. I'm sorry. It's like, if there's someone who's going to scare me on Hertha's side, it's not going to be him. But his work rate, his effort, his pressing, it's kind of one of those where you see him and you go, in a year, latest in 2, obviously notwithstanding the gazillion Bellingham to Manchester United tweets that will come out between now and then, is that he is the natural replacement for Axel Witsel, and that you will have a Bellingham and maybe Bellingham De Hoot type central midfield pairing that can not just press and resist press, but also pass and has energy to spare. Because with, you'd mentioned Meunier before, and I didn't get on his back right away like so many other people did, because I'm like, well, you got to give people some time to bed in. Well, he's had that time to bed in. He needs to get better now. And as everybody knows, I did the same thing with Dahoud, gave him some time, and then was like, no, this guy is just playing like crap, even though he is capable of doing so much more. I don't know if Thomas Meunier is able to do that. And Dahoud is proving it this season. I think he is, so far, he would get my vote for most improved player for Dortmund this season. But Bellingham coming in adds that extra dynamic in there as well, and that just shows where a Dortmund simply has a leg up over a Hertha, or over, I would say, 15 other teams in the Bundesliga. Is just the amount of the quality Dortmund can bring off the bench. And then you have that other teenager who shows up then, 2 other teenagers. You got 3 teenagers on there that can be absolute difference makers, between Bellingham, Reina, and Moukoko. So not only is the future very bright for Dortmund, but the present as well, because they can just change things up. And now with 5 substitutions, it's even more so. I mean, it's the fear that people had that the big clubs will benefit more from the 5 sub rules than the clubs of lesser means. I mean, that's absolutely true. Dortmund are proving that. And so I was very happy with his performance as well.
Yeah, quick correction. Obviously, Bellingham did not lead the team in pressures. That would be a little bit too ridiculous. There was obviously Dahoud with 27 pressures, and then you had Royce with 26, Haaland with 19, and Brandt with 18. But I did wanted to point out that in the 30 minutes, he already ranked 5th among a team, and everyone I just mentioned, apart from Dahoud, who played 60 minutes, Royce had 76, Haaland had 84, and Brandt had 90 minutes, and Witsel and Meunier, who are 6th and 7th best in pressuring opponents, also played 90 minutes. Obviously, that position sort of invites you to pressure your opponents a little bit more. But I just need to point it out, because it's even if you don't pass the ball around as much, just the way you manipulate the ball flying from left to right in the way that Bellingham does it, consciously knowing where you want the opponent to pass the ball. It's pretty cool, that you can then capitalize on the mistake of an opponent, is obviously sort of the cherry on top. But I just wanted to point it out real quick, because he made pretty much an immediate impact. And obviously, you can say the similar thing about Gio Reyna, because I think he also won the ball in. Was it before the 4-1 or the 4-1 was created via throw-in, but was the it
was the 5th one.
The 5th one, yeah, or the 5th two in that regard. That was pretty cool too. Then he won the ball, and I think his sort of weird touch to Bellingham actually allowed the Bellingham assist. Then again, a nice vertical pass to Haaland. I don't even want to say it was the perfect pass to Haaland, because he sort of had to stumble a little bit, but it just shows what a great first touch Haaland has. That he can, run into this channel with quite the amount of pace, get an imperfect ball, and sort of have the balance, the footwork and everything to shoot it off and to score the goal before the opponents can even get to him physically. He was completely unbothered in the middle of the box, which is a great quality. And once again, please pass the ball vertically to Haaland as often as you can, because it's quite amazing. I think there was this one Hummels dime where he almost had it, where I think he was onside and just couldn't convert against Schwolo. But it's just amazing how he performed in this game. And these 4 goals obviously very much deserved. So yeah, I think Dortmund fans just need to enjoy this while it lasts, because you obviously see the rise of a complete soccer superstar. You know, there's no doubt about it. So I'm just really glad that he decided to join Dortmund for the next step in his career, and that we're now the benefactors. And he right now is giving Robert Lewandowski a good run for his money in the race for the Torjägerkanone. I think Robert Lewandowski right now is on 11 goals, and Haaland is right behind him now on 10. So I think that was also the first time he scored away from home, and 4 apiece right away. So not a bad performance at all in these regards. Matthias, how vital is Haaland right now for Dortmund to beat the obvious dead horse a little bit longer?
Well, I mean, he's got the speed, the size, and the strength of a horse, so may as well. Well, it's everything, really. I mean, go back in time. What was Dortmund when Aubameyang was out or when Lewandowski was out? You just didn't really, I mean, Adrian Ramos. But with Haaland, Dortmund plays completely different when he's not in there, because you're not trying the vertical pass into the channel for your striker to run onto. It's way more the tiki-taka style, much more methodical, slower build-up, rather than building it up, change of pace, knocking it into a channel, and then magic happens. You just don't have anybody else in the Dortmund squad who can do that with that also strength. I mean, that's the other thing about his game you can't forget, is it's not only that he has pace, but he can shrug defenders off physically as well in a one-on-one. You add then the pace with it, and you just don't have a chance. I mean, you're toast as a defender. You have to position yourself perfectly. And there are very few central defenders in the Bundesliga that are capable of doing that at the moment. So without Haaland, Dortmund are a completely different side, way slower, way more difficult to stomach sometimes, because it could just take forever. And he also gives them that fight. I mean, he will chase every single ball that goes that way. And so, yeah, hopefully and I don't think it's too much of a hyperbole to say it, that a future very strong contender for a Ballon d'Or, Erling Haaland, can stay fit, and like you said, we need to enjoy it while we can, because obviously he's not going to end his career at Dortmund. He's way too young for that, and B, he's just going to get thrown. I mean, some people said, well, maybe he'll go to Bayern, because supposedly that's where they originally wanted to go. I think he's gone past Bayern, and it's straight to Real Madrid type level.
I can only hope so.
They're going to be looking at next. I really pray that he doesn't inherit Lewandowski at Bayern, because that would be too much to stomach in that moment. But I think, given how good he is, yeah, I mean, it's a Liverpool, it's a Real Madrid, it's that level, which I think from a world renown outshines Bayern in that aspect. If you want to win the Ballon d'Or, you basically need to go to a Real Madrid or a Barcelona, which obviously those two have produced all of the Ballon d'Or winners over the last I don't know how many years. So that's where I see his future after Dortmund.
Yeah, he could be the next Cristiano Ronaldo, basically. Not maybe position-wise,
minus the asshole.
Yeah, but yeah, obviously, hopefully. But I just mean from a pedigree standpoint of the player type, that you're just producing exceptional numbers on a consistent basis. But yeah, he's a little nicer, I guess, than Ronaldo, and hopefully also no rape charges against him in the future. One can only hope. So yeah, but it's just cool to see a player that's really motivates his team and teammates around him, that's always out there, giving 100%. It's kind of weird to in professional football, obviously, none of these players are lazy bumps just jogging around, even though they are getting accused quite often of doing exactly that. But, that there's obviously a percentile at the very top where it supersedes everyone else. And he sort of does that with this tenacity and pace, and obviously, the way he celebrates when someone else scores. It's just really healthy for the team to have a guy like him in there and to sort of lead the line. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say about Haaland for today, because I feel like we're going to talk plenty about him in the future. And there are two players I really want to put my focus on today. Obviously, apart from Moukoko, who we'll have to mention at some point. But one is, again, Rafael Guerreiro. Not only got the goal for the 4-1, should have had another probably before halftime, but he had the most touches in the team with 96, and I think he has a very good pass completion rate, around 93% or something. Progressive distance is in his passes is 319 yards, and the progressive distance in his carries is at 230 yards, and he had the most carries with the ball. Right now, he is a player that's almost unguardable when he plays the way he plays, especially as a wingback in that 3-4-3 system. He is creating so many opportunities for Dortmund, and he is, I don't know how else to say this. I mean, he had 6 shot creating actions, and he is just phenomenal right now. And we've talked about him before, but again, if you look at the other side with Meunier, who struggled sometimes, especially when it comes to the creative part, Guerreiro right now is really unleashed. And apart from the first 10 minutes where he was sort of sleepwalking around the pitch, and I think even committed a weird tactical foul at some point and got a booking, he is really a player that you sort of need to shut down right away if you think from the opposition coach's perspective. Obviously there are a lot of names on the Dortmund team sheet where you need to put your attention on, but I think right now as an opposition coach you have to figure out a way how to shut down Guerreiro. But the way Dortmund play, I don't really know how you do that, because especially when I think Lucien Favre called it the false number 10s with Reus and Brandt, who played way more centrally because they're both not really wingers. It just allows so much space for Guerreiro to operate in, and the amount of freedom he is being awarded right now by moving across the entire field, moving to the inside, playing on the wing. Matthias, I don't really see or foresee in the future for any coach to really come up with a solution on how to stop Guerreiro without opening other spaces than that Julian Brandt or whoever can hurt you in there.
No, I agree. I mean, if you overcommit to pressing or man marking Guerreiro, well, you're just opening yourself up. I mean, aside from Brandt or whoever's on that side, the double pivot that's in there that can also slide in there. I mean, you have an Akanji who can then just stroll basically as an overlapping center back. Given his pace and his passing range, they'll just play that vertical pass into the channel for Haaland to run into over and over and over again. So it's interesting because they can't also just let him go, but they kind of have to, because whenever you go man-to-man centrally or on the wings and you get pulled out of position, the gap you leave, you expose your own fullback or winger or central defender so much to out-and-out attacking players. He is as pivotal, that's not a word, pivotal to Dortmund's build-up play and attack as Haaland is in finishing the moves.
Yeah, and I mean, we were asked to talk a little bit about his connection with Akanji, and this is why I said 2 players I want to highlight, because the other one really is Akanji right now. not only because he is leading the team in progressive passing distance with 627 yards. That's exactly 200 more than Meunier got, who is the other player. But it just shows you right now what a momentum machine Akanji is for Dortmund. I mean, you see in certain situations that he is leaving the back three to pressure opponents already in midfield. It's something you're more accustomed to see from Can or Hummels, but Akanji is doing it quite as well now. And I don't know if the left side in the back three is his preferred position, but still he had another really good game. He is once again using his pace to win challenges and also to often clean up mistakes that his teammates in the backline make. And it's kind of funny that he is also turning into Mr. Reliable after, being maligned to be Mr. Unreliable so many times last season. And I'm just really happy and glad to see it, because we always knew about the potential that Akanji has. Obviously, he has the ball playing skills, he has the physical attributes to defend well, and we always knew he could read the game well. But there were so many instances of ball watching by Akanji over the previous seasons that I'm just really glad that he is now in his flow again. And playing really great football, and especially when he has Guerreiro on this left side, he is utilizing that really well by passing it forward to Guerreiro, or also with the positioning that he either builds the angle to have a passing outlet for Guerreiro, or vice versa, that he just shifts out of the opposition's cover shadow, or is twisted so that Guerreiro no longer is in the cover shadow, and then plays a pass. It's all very intelligent. His pass completion rate was also about around 93%. Not as high as Bellingham and Moukoko, both at 100%, and Emre Can and Witsel obviously at 96%, as you would expect. But it's just it's just terrific to see right now for him to really come into his role, and I'm very happy with him now. I mean, he's 25 years old. This is sort of when you expect for him to start hitting his prime, but Akanji playing on this high level consistently is really an asset. Matthias, especially since you are the one with the Swiss roots in the family, I think you're very much rooting for him too.
Yeah, as a quasi-Swiss national, I definitely, root pretty hard for any Eidgenossen. Probably explains my slightly blind eye towards Bürki at times. But with Akanji, I always knew, because we had seen him play at a very high level 3 years ago, roughly 2 years ago. And then when Hummels came back, and then he had the hip injury, and he really had a massive dip. But we talked about it before. I think at least it looks like his hip injury is now completely healed, because he can also turn. His balance is much better. He doesn't get knocked off the ball easily. And it's very hard to beat him for pace. Anybody that goes up against him, no matter how fast in the Bundesliga, he very rarely gets beaten for pace. Which obviously same can't be said of Mats Hummels, who makes up for it in his positional play, obviously, and his otherwise play. But this back three, and I was really concerned, I'll be honest, that Favre was going to stick with a 4-2-3-1, or concern's the wrong word. I wouldn't have been surprised if he had, but since he switched back to the back three, I'm like, oh, Favre has committed more to the back three than I probably give him credit for. Not as we have to do this, but I want us to do this. This is our best formation, because you have three difference makers in central defense now, with Hummels, Can, and Akanji, all of whom have great passing range, have good energy, can move forward with the ball. The other guys drop back, and you still have a back four, and then you have a Witsel or someone drop back, and you still kind of maintain a back three. So just the automatisms they have in their movement and their build-up play is fantastic. And I know I said Dahoud's probably, for me, the comeback or the most improved player. Akanji's pretty neck and neck with him, but I feel like Dahoud had more to prove than Akanji, because with Akanji, we had seen how well he could play before Hummels showed up. And now I feel like he's back on top form, which, of course, at some point, Favre is going to look at that and go, well, we have this really good other player called Zagadou, and then things get interesting, even though I think then Akanji moves to his more natural side, which is on the right side of the back three.
So you have to take Can out. Yeah, it's it's not going to be easy. Well, then you just
move. Well, you move Can. Well, no, you move Can into central midfield, or if you're just not happy with the situation at right back, you put him in at right back. I think he could absolutely perform there.
No, obviously. I mean, you can even play Hazard as a right wing back. I mean, the options are just so plentiful right now that it's almost impossible to guess a Dortmund lineup, especially with the rotation that is going on. And I must say, I mean, first of all, you have a switch in your system. You rotate players, obviously, and it's after the international break. But all things considered, how seamless Dortmund right now managed to maintain the balance that they have in this side is kind of crazy almost. It's almost frightening. I don't think I've seen this ever, that Dortmund smooth so many parts around and they still remain this balanced, because usually they're either very top heavy or they may have a good defense, but their attacking output is sort of meh. But right now, I feel like they have the defensive stability and they manage to create goals and chances, and it's really hard for opponents to figure that one out. And especially with this back line right now, or this back three, you have Hummels, who's obviously one of the best players in the world when it comes to build-up play, but Akanji and Can sort of perfectly complement that with their own abilities right now. And it's just really nice to see that they make it incredibly hard from a tactical position to sort of win the ball off Dortmund in their first sort of play sequence. Yes, you can obviously win the ball maybe if you pressure the fullbacks, and obviously in midfield, as we've seen in this game, but just sort of winning it, say 20 meters away from goal just by pressing Dortmund really high is really impossible to pull off. And if you do it, you are always in danger that the next thing you'll see is a long ball by Hummels over the top or whatever. So just having this formation right now really prohibits opponents to play super aggressive, and we know Dortmund often struggle if opponents play like that, so you sort of have like a child lock against that, which I really, really like. So kudos to Favre, kudos to Zorc for sort of constructing this kind of team right now. I even if they're taking their sweet time to get the RPM high enough in those games, overall I'm really enjoying how Dortmund are conducting themselves yet. And I think we are always talking about what does Dortmund need to have success to win maybe a title, and it's always about consistency, and I think this is the most consistent Dortmund we have seen in a very long time. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matthias, but if they can keep it up, I think that they can actually win the Bundesliga title this season and have a better chance with this sort of balance and consistency than they had in previous seasons, even though they were just, points-wise very close.
I agree.
All right. All right, Matthias. And I think the onus now, as the oldest, is on you to talk about the youngest, and that's Moukoko coming on as a 16-year-old, writing Bundesliga history. What did you make of Favre saying that it was sort of his instinct to bring him on for the final 5 minutes or so?
Well, I mean, first of all, I appreciate you calling me the oldest. That's awesome. Thank you. But now to underline your point, I still remember when Nuri Sahin came on and everyone was like, oh my God, it's a 16-year-old. Well, now you have somebody who just barely turned 16 and is not in Football Manager 21. Come on, people.
Shame.
He didn't. I'll actually say this. not that this has anything to do with this, but everybody knows I'm a big fan of that game. And the reason why they didn't include him is because when they had to submit the licensing or whatever, he was still 15, and due to European child protection laws, they couldn't include him. It's very interesting. Anyway, back to, if I was saying he just had an instinct. I mean, the game was over. It was won. There was zero risk at all for bringing him in at that point. You wanted to give Haaland some time off. The kid could play completely relaxed because you're not going to screw anything up to the point of losing that game anymore, especially given how high up the pitch he played. So it was great to see. Had he not brought him in with that scoreline, I don't think Favre would have heard the end of it, especially with 5 subs available. It was you kind of had to bring him in. And I'm glad to see that he did, because it was a safe environment to do it. You're not just throwing him into the deep end, which to a certain degree, Gio Reyna had been thrown in the deep end, Bellingham to a degree as well, Pulisic before him as well. Moukoko, they've been very, very safe with how they approach, but also they couldn't throw him in sooner because of German laws. And he played well, actually. There wasn't much to see there, but he seemed to have zero fear. He wasn't intimidated at all. What did he score? 44 goals in 21 matches at the previous age level. So it was kind of like, yeah, bring him in.
Well, the previous age level, we have to point out, is the under 19. He was 15.
It's 3 years older. Yeah, he was 14 and 15, playing against 19-year-olds and absolutely blowing them away, Schalke. And so I think I'm very cautiously very optimistic about this kid. Now, he lacks the physicality. When you saw him and Haaland standing next to each other, and like, okay, that one guy is really big and the other guy really isn't.
It's literally the Mandalorian. Come on. It's the Mandalorian and the kid. That's just what it is.
Pretty much. But obviously he still has plenty of years of growth still ahead of him, which is an insane thing to say at the professional footballing level. Oh, that guy could still, add another 15 centimeters in height, no problem, and an extra 15 kilos in weight and strength. But he can, because he's 16, barely. So I would like to see him get a few more runouts, maybe for longer, because, again, Haaland does need breaks, because if Haaland breaks, then our discussion about Dortmund's balance is going to be a little bit different, Stefan.
Yeah.
And so I would like to see him get some minutes in Bundesliga, even though I think I read that that's unlikely to happen. But why not? If Dortmund are up 2-3 goals, throw the kid in. Literally, you got nothing to lose. And put him in there and see what he can do with that backing of the lack of pressure. And that's the key thing with young players. You don't want to burn them out. You don't want to have all that pressure on them. He already has a lot of pressure of expectation on him, given how he's torn it up at I've been reading about this kid since he was 12. So playing against 15-year-olds.
Greetings also to my former colleague at ESPN, Stefan Ursfeld, who had to write stories about him when he was very young. I don't think you really need to distribute this sort of story to an international audience right away, but just goes to show how much hype there is about Youssoufa Moukoko and how difficult it was going to be. There are obviously the reports that he is already on 350,000 per year contract at Dortmund, and that he makes, that he has a long-term contract signed with Nike, and I think he can make up to 10 million from that and stuff like that. So just his first appearances, I think, came with like a bonus, and I think the signing bonus in itself was 1 million, according to reports. It just goes to show how crazy the football business is, but also that sort of everyone expects him to sort of skyrocket and really be one of the most exceptional players in the future. And obviously from what we've seen at youth level, there's very little to refute that, but obviously the step from the youth football to pro level is a step that you must not underestimate. And we'll see how it deals with that. But I mean, in terms of pace, we also in German, we obviously talk about Spielgeschwindigkeit, the pace of the game. He looked fine. He looked like a fish in the water. He did not seem like he was bothered with the pace, which is obviously a bit higher at Bundesliga level than at youth level. And from the 5 minutes we've seen, it was a good debut. I was very happy for him, and obviously getting that stat in to succeed Nuri Sahin, and literally one day after your 16th birthday. I think this is going to be a record that's going to stand for a while. I don't see another 16-year-old kid to have their debut on their 16th birthday. So yeah, I think it's cool for Dortmund to have that again, and just underscores again their great work at youth level.
And, when you really think about it, yes, I'm a little closer to Dortmund than other clubs, so you pay a little bit more attention. But when it comes to the hype around a kid and the rumblings you even hear from people who are not close to Dortmund, like, oh, do you hear about this kid who's just tearing it up? I can honestly say there are only like a handful of players over the last 15, 20 years that I can truly recall people were, kind of excited about them at the age of 13, 14, 15. One of them is his teammate right now, Erling Haaland. You heard about him really early. Kylian Mbappe is another one. Neymar would be another one. Vinicius Jr. And of course, Messi. Those are all players where you already heard that when they were 12, 13, 14, where they were blowing away kids that were 3, 4, 5, 6 years older and just blowing them away. There are others where you said, oh, this guy's really good, but not like this. So I wish the kid all the best. I wish him the complete opposite of Freddie Adu's career. And
Jeremy Dudziak's career.
Yeah, but even them, it wasn't this. I mean, Freddie Adu to a degree, but that was also because U.S. soccer was just so unabashedly desperate for something like this. But Jeremy Dudziak, yeah, I mean, there was some hype, but it's not this. And not the numbers weren't this.
It's not comparable at all.
Like I said, I mean, the only ones I can compare him to are people like Neymar, Mbappe, Messi, and Haaland that I can truly remember over the last 15, 20 years, where there was this much hype about them as a young teenager.
Yeah. I think that's also a really great segue to talk about Gio Reyna and his contract extension. He just celebrated his 18th birthday, so he also is barely legal. I guess the best news for him, obviously, he no longer has to lie to Pornhub. but no, more seriously, Matthias, he sort of signed the longest long-term contract that he could sign. I read, from reports and sources beforehand that he signed a contract till 2024, but it was 2025. I think same reports I'm citing right now said that he has a raise to 2.5 million per year now. But apart from that, how great is it for Dortmund to have this long-term signing? And do you think that there will be another extension on the horizon, or do you think that by 2024 at the latest he's likely to leave Dortmund with the ripe old age of 22 then?
Well, I mean, again, like I said with Haaland, he will not end his career at Dortmund. Now, he's a little bit more tied to Dortmund because he's been there a little bit longer.
Yeah, but let me stop you right here. I mean, we sort of, every time there's a young player, like be it Pulisic, Sancho, etc., coming through, we all sort of know Dortmund is a stepping stone and then go on to bigger ways. At some point, there needs to be someone who sort of builds a connection with Dortmund, bit in a DD fashion, maybe not in the same spirit, but you know what I mean, where you actually think, okay, I'm Gio Reyna, for example, and I can play for any other club, but I actually would like to spend more time here and maybe leave at 25 or 26, etc. or even beyond that? Do you think that of players coming through that Reina could be one of these examples that actually like it here a bit to stick around a bit longer? Do you think that's realistic, or do you think that would be just a bit too romanticizing these sort of kids?
Well, honestly, I think the chance that someone like Moukoko is still at Dortmund in 10 years is higher than Gio Reyna being there in 7 or 8 years. I'll be honest, I think the pressure's too big there from a U.S. national team side to go, hey, you need to showcase your talents in the Premier League, and maybe also wanting to follow in his father's footsteps and play in the Premier League, because that's really the showcase league for an American player. Let's be honest, it's English language, it's the biggest blah, blah, blah. So I think that's where a Gio Reyna is naturally heading. I think he seems to be a little bit more mature than Pulisic was, but it's still a little bit early. We'll talk again in 2 years.
If I'm Gio Reyna, sorry if I have to butt in, but if I'm Gio Reyna, I'm going to look at Peacock and say, no one's going to sign for this. I'm just going to stick with the league that's featured from ESPN. Just going to throw this out there.
well, then he's going to go to Napoli too. But even though actually that would be kind of an interesting move. But anyway, moving on. I think, with Dortmund, they have so many good young players that this is just kind of going to be this revolving door. I think Bellingham, and we have no chance. He's going... In 4 or 5 years, he's going to be in the Premier League. And obviously, it's his native country. That makes perfect sense. With Gio Reyna, yeah, I'd love to see him still at Dortmund when he's 26, 27, 28. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't. I just think the exterior pressure is going to be so much to want to move to the Premier League that that's where he's going to end up. Unless, of course, he takes such huge steps in the next 2 years in a development and that he's more at a Haaland already superstar level that the Premier League isn't even it's a Real Madrid type level. But the other thing, of course, is financially teams in the Premier League is just going to give you more money. And that's a big factor. And I can't blame a guy for going, I'm going to take that money and go there because it's not like he's taking ludicrous money to go to China. He's taking ludicrous money to go to England. So, and play in the Champions League and be front and center for the US audience, who is more Premier League centric than Bundesliga centric. So that's just where I see him going in. I think this conversation will have to be had again in about 2 years. I think right now it's not, but when he turns 20, I think, and he keeps on this trajectory of productivity and growth, then that's a definite conversation that's going to be had again at that time.
Yeah, what's really positive right now about Gio Reyna is obviously that he made the transition from a youth player to becoming a pro player in this season. Last season, he was hoping for his first Bundesliga start, and this season he seems to be an absolutely integral part of the team. He just turned 18, and you don't think about him as a youth player anymore. None whatsoever, even though he could easily play for an under-19 side. You see him as a full professional, and I think that's just full credit to him, just because he plays in such a mature way already that you don't feel like, he is inexperienced and youthful and, he's making obvious rookie mistakes. Far from it. I think that his strength is actually that he makes a lot of really great decisions. That's like Thomas Müller, he's a bit of a Raumdeuter. In the sense that he reads the game really, really well, and this footballing IQ is helping him a lot. His technique is great, but I still see a little bit of room for improvement there. He's not the best dribbler, and he's pretty fast, but he's also not the fastest player. But for Dortmund, he is a very important player that when brought on as a super sub or as a starter, I think he always makes a difference, and that's very important. So, having the 5-year deal right now is obviously very important for Dortmund, and I would not be surprised if Dortmund tack on a couple more extensions or so to increase his salary, according to his performances, and as he gains relevance in next seasons. I mean, it's just great to see that a young American can once again make it so seamlessly, and it's also nice to see that at this age he's also quite physical already. That sometimes defenders actually bounce off him when he manages to bring his body between the ball and the defender. That's obviously a feature we didn't quite see as often from Christian Pulisic to make that comparison. So I think Dortmund can be very, very happy with the way things are going, because they're not really spending a lot of money on him, all things considered, and given the output he's already providing, once again kudos for that move. And I'm really looking forward to the next 3 or 4 years, because while we both sort of agree that he's probably not going to play in his prime at Dortmund, we'll still see a lot of good stuff in a very long time. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Matthias, any other things you want to say about that Hertha game?
Aside from the fact that I still don't know why that was given as a penalty, no.
Yeah, I know that was sort of a dive, but I don't know. I don't think we need to spend too much time on it, because there are other very important things to get to. Matthias, are you surprised that Schalke finally made it to the top of the bottom by losing
I'm not
another game?
I'm not surprised.
It's amazing now. They have 24 games in the Bundesliga without a win. Just imagine that. It's really hard to comprehend how a club like this can manage such an epic streak, and yet here we are. And due to Mainz beating Freiburg somewhat surprisingly 3-1, they are now ahead of Schalke, and I think Schalke right now are level on points with Cologne, but obviously their goal difference is so just terrible. Yeah, I don't know what to say. So Matthias, I've asked this question before, but I have to ask this again. Are Schalke going to get relegated?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I do not see. I actually watched that match against Wolfsburg, which I don't like Wolfsburg either. They play really boring football. I mean, they score about as many goals as the bottom 5 do. So, yay, Wolfsburg. But even a team that doesn't really score goals has a pretty easy time against Schalke. Schalke have no concept defensively. They have no concept in attack. It's hoping that Mark Uth, of all players, is going to score the goals to get you the points to not get relegated. I think the only thing that can save them is the incompetence of other teams around them. But they're just... I think they're also stuck in their own heads, because on paper, they do have good players. They have players that at least shouldn't be bottom of the Bundesliga and playing so badly. I'm not going to blame David Wagner. I'm not going to blame Manuel Baum. It's just maybe a little bit Manuel Baum, but it's just everything about it is bad. And I saw that, was it Michael Reschke? Looks like he's going to get fired, and everything is now being questioned in Schalke. Well, where was this 3 years ago? I mean, yeah, I realized 3 years ago that they finished? No, it was longer than 3 years ago that they finished second. But still, it's like, really, you're only now things are, no, I said it today on Twitter. It's like, not only do they deserve to get relegated, I think they actually need to be relegated. They do, in all seriousness. It would get rid of the dead wood. It would free them of a lot of horrendous contracts. I mean,
you think
players on wages that they just can't have. And then also get rid of the delusions of grandeur. You know, kind of flush the toilet. and come back. Like Stuttgart, granted Stuttgart needed it twice now, but still that you kind of purge yourself of that, or you just keep on falling and you become Kaiserslautern.
Yeah, that's my question though.
Offenbach
Like if Schalke
like
do get relegated, is this all flushing the toilet concept? Which is obviously the fantastic best analogy you could pick. But do you think that's actually going to work for them? Or do you think they're going to, play with their first team against Dortmund's second team soon?
Yeah, they'll be battling against Preußen Münster for promotion from the Regionalliga West. Well, I mean, if they continue on this trajectory, then obviously they will, because they'll be bankrupt. They'll be insolvent. They will have no more money. And everything I've heard for the last few months coming out of the club is Ausgliederung, where they're like, oh, we'll separate the football entity from the rest of the club because that'll allow additional financing. I don't know if that's going to come from Russian oligarchs or where they're going to find that money. But right now, investing in Schalke, it's not exactly something you'd want to do. The infrastructure of the club is great, but the infrastructure of the region is not. And you have deadwood players. You have a coach who probably won't end the season as Schalke head coach. So if they're banking on Ausgliederung, ask HSV how that went for them. HSV was also banking on Ausgliederung and then getting all that private capital put in, and they still got relegated, and they're still in the second Bundesliga, and they just got their asses kicked by Bochum. Deservedly got their asses kicked by Bochum in the second Bundesliga. And if they're not careful, they're once again going to fail to get promotion in the Bundesliga. And I believe in my heart that Bundesliga needs Hamburg more than it needs Schalke. Let's be honest. Just as a Standpunkt, as a place where the Bundesliga is seen, Hamburg is more important than Gelsenkirchen. But at the same time, you have other teams that are just doing it better than them in the front office, as well as on the pitch. But maybe they can get out of their head like Stuttgart did and refocus and rebuild. But Stuttgart has a different mentality. Schalke is way more akin to Hamburg in that sense, especially when you look at both with Hamburg and Schalke, their glories are more distant than they were, say, with Stuttgart. So, and Stuttgart's is a different mentality in general than Gelsenkirchen is. I mean, everything is Schalke in that region. And so, I'll be honest, I think they're going to get relegated. I think they're going to give Bielefeld a run for their money as far as bottom of the table. I still think Bielefeld's going to get relegated because they just don't have the quality, but they're a better run club than Schalke.
Yeah, it's really quite interesting to see how Schalke are falling apart. And I mean, you're talking about the Ausgliederung and fresh money coming into this thing, but I feel like the chances are they're just going to spend it on more quote unquote deadwood, as you said. So while it's still all close there at the bottom and Schalke may pull out the great escape, I mean, it's not like Mainz, Freiburg, Cologne or Bielefeld are teams that are likely to gather 1 million points in the next weeks, but Jesus Christ, are Schalke bad. And it's kind of hilarious to watch, but it's also kind of, not hilarious seeing a once great club to, completely fall apart like this. We've seen it before in the Bundesliga, but you can pull yourself out of this situation as Werder Bremen is showing right now. So there's always hope for Schalke, but it's not looking great at all. So Matthias, thank you very much for your expertise and prediction on what is going to happen to Schalke. We will revisit this as the weeks progress. But now, obviously, a very steep turn, I must say, from talking about Schalke to talking about the Champions League. But Matthias, obviously, tomorrow, Tuesday, Dortmund will host Club Brugge, who are still the pot 4 team and obviously a team that Dortmund must beat in the group stages. And if they do, I think they will then accumulate 9 points in Group F, which should set them quite on for a group win. I mean, right now they are on 6 points, 1 point ahead of Lazio. Club Brugge have 4 points. What do you expect from this game, which is obviously on a Tuesday night, and then I think on Saturday Dortmund hosts Cologne. So this should be 6 points in total. What kind of rotation do you expect from Lucien Favre going into the game against the Belgium side?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. I personally, against Brugge, I'd let Thomas Meunier play. I mean, this is former club, may as well. Given that there's no travel needed, that does help. I think a rotation in the double pivot would be good for everybody. Just I think, bringing in Bellingham for this match would make sense. Whoever you pair him up with there, Delaney, I think that could work. And then rotating a little bit in the attacking sense, I would let Hazard play, I'd let Sancho play. And then Brandt and Reus, give them a little bit of time off. Haaland, I expect him to start.
Reina.
And then Reina, I think, could be another one that you start instead. So, I mean, the options are there. I think Guerreiro will start. I think the back five, and then let's call it a back six with Bürki, I think that'll stay the same. I don't expect much change there because it's not like they ran that much against Hertha. So I think you could keep the same ones in there. If you're going to take Meunier out, which I could see the reasoning behind it, maybe you put in Felix Passlack. I mean, I think Passlack's a better wingback than Meunier is, and I think Meunier is a better fullback than Passlack. So if you're going with the back three, that's one that I could see happening and I'd be okay with. I'd want to see Bellingham play, and like you said, I think Gio Reyna and Torgan Hazard are players I'd like to see play.
Yeah, I mean, give Reus a break. I could even see Favre giving Guerreiro a break, just because we all know his hamstrings are also a little fickle. So putting Passlack in for Guerreiro and maybe switching back to back four is something I could see. Not necessarily I would predict, but if you're more erring on the side of caution, that would be a move I would make. And otherwise, you can really switch out almost the entire team and still have a team that should be capable to beat Bruges. That being said, obviously, the game in Bruges, even though I think it was in the end a very relatively easy 3-0, the scoreline does belie a little bit the run of play that Bruges did have a couple of chances, and I don't need the sort of Legia Warschau-esque kind of performance from Dortmund at home. But I must say, right now, I really expect Dortmund to come up with a professional performance and not be an entire meme and sort of a comedic outlet in the sense that they allow 3 goals or so, because I was talking about the balance that they have previously, and I think they'll continue in that same vein, that even if they concede a goal or so, that they won't be really rattled, and just in the end, when all is said and done and the referee blows the final whistle, I think by then it'll be clearly decided in the favor of Dortmund. So my prediction for this game is a 3-1 win for the Black and Yellows. What's yours?
I'm going with a 2-0 clean sheet.
Very nice. And I think that's all for now for today. I'm hoping we'll have a quote-unquote Thanksgiving episode, in the fact that we can record maybe another episode on Thursday and then tend to the listener questions we got for our, when I asked for questions for the international Q&A, maybe combine that a little bit by talking about Bruges and Cologne. And in the meantime, Matthias, how can people follow you on the Twitter?
Well, you can send all your love and hate to @MatthiasSug.
Yeah, you can also send your neutral takes at Stefan Butzko on Twitter. And you know what? I don't feel like giving a whole large outro, so I'm just going to say goodbye until next week or this week. We'll see. Anyway, as always, thank you for listening. Until then.